So now let's take a look at how to add your ladder up stitches in the every last drop mitts. As you can see, I have filled in 3 of the 4 columns of dropped stitches in this mitt. And one of the hardest things that I found when I was developing this stitch is that you need to give yourself a much longer contrast yarn piece than you might think. So initially I said measure a piece twice the length of the mitt, but I found that didn't always give me quite enough to have a good tail to weave in. So I'm instead recommending about 2.5 times the mitt length, maybe a little bit more. So my contrast yarn for this mitt is Unicorn Bark in Malabrigo Ultimate Sock. So I'm using that. And again, these are worked in fingering weight, and I am using a USD or 3.25 millimeter crochet hook to add this contrast yarn in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the right side of the piece of scrap yarn, and I'm going to give myself a good 2-3 inch tail so I have a good solid piece to weave in later. As you can see from this piece, the tail got cut a little bit short before it got woven in, so I'll be taking this piece out and redoing it. Okay, so I'm pulling this behind the stitches, and okay, so now I've got it in position. So what I should see is that contrast yarn behind the ladder rungs caused by those stitches I dropped, which there they are. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm leaving my tail long behind the ribbing. I'm reaching into that first space between the ladder rungs, and I'm going to pull up a loop of that contrast yarn with my crochet hook. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next space between the next 2 rungs. I'm going to pull up another loop on my crochet hook. Now this first one's going to be loose because it's not yet anchored. We'll go back and fix that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this loop through the first loop. Okay. Now I'm going to come to the next space between the rungs, reach in with the crochet hook, pull up a loop, and pull it through the previous loop. Okay, there we go. Between the ladder rungs, oops, let's try that again. Between the ladder rungs, pull up a loop, and pull it through the previous loop. I have found that it works best to do this holding the mitt horizontally rather than vertically. Okay. And I'm just holding that yarn in place as I go with my finger behind the dropped stitches. Pulling it. Oops. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to work up the entire column of stitches this way, and I'm going to finish this off and then show you what I do to finish and weave in ends. I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I'm back. I have finished laddering up the full column of stitches, and now I'm at my last stitch. Okay, so to find it, I'm gonna hold my finger behind it, kind of stretch those stitches out a little bit. And this is unintentionally more difficult because the yarn has a blue speckle at this section, but I can take my best guess, reach in here, and there we go, got it. Okay, so I'm gonna bring that final loop through, and I'm going to actually pull it all the way through and secure it by tugging up. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, I'm going to turn the glove slightly inside out, and I am going to reach through the crochet hook just above that last ladder up stitch. I'm going to grab that tail with my crochet hook and bring it through to the back. And now I can go ahead and weave it in just like I normally would any other end. On the bottom of the row where I started the ladder up stitch, you can see that first stitch I did is super loose. So I'm going to turn this inside out. I'm just going to tug on that a little bit and see how it looks. Yeah, way better. Way better. And there is a little bit of a hole there, which is caused by running that stitch into the make one that I used to stop the column of dropped stitches from running any further. And what I'll do is I will weave that end in just like a standard end to kind of close that hole up. So that is how you do the ladder up stitch. It's just like if you dropped a regular stitch and were bringing a loop up, except that you're doing it with waste yarn so that it creates a nice contrast. So there you go, the ladder up stitch for the Every Last Drop mitts, the 2023 knitting pattern for Stilly River Yarns for the Puget Sound Local Yarn Shop Tour.